Hey, listeners, it's LaVelle E. Neal. In this episode, we bring you the first ever Talk North Sports Report, recorded live at Parlay Bar and Kitchen in downtown Minneapolis. I was joined by fellow Talk North host Mark Rosen, Jim Souhan, John Krawczynski, and Michael Russo as we discussed all things Minnesota sports, and I share my take on more than just Twins baseball. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Parlay Kitchen and Bar. Thanks for coming out tonight. We appreciate it. If you're not familiar with what's going on here, this is going to be our first Talk North Sports Report, hosted by Mark Rosen. The lineup tonight, Mark Rosen, you know him. LaVelle E. Neal III, you know him. LaVelle's shy. Try to bring him out of his shell if you can. John Krawczynski from The Athletic. Michael Russo from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan. So we started this a number of years ago, and we always looked forward to having this kind of a show with somebody like Mark Rosen hosting. Michael Russo has been great for us. This thing would not have gotten off the ground without him. John Krawczynski does one of the most popular shows on the network. LaVelle has been a friend and a colleague of mine at Start to Be In for 27 years now.
26.
26, right? Yes. 26 years now. That makes me feel younger. And of course, Mark Rosen is one of the great TV personalities in Minnesota history.
Hall of Famer.
He has just signed on. Yes, Hall of Famer. And he's just signed on with our network, TalkNorth.com. If you're not familiar with this, it's a bunch of sports podcasts with the best lineup in town. We also have outdoor content, and things are growing. This is a sign of that. We're really thankful to Parlay Kitchen and Bar for having us. We're also sponsored by Giggly THC Beverages. There are free samples in the back. I drink this all the time. It's great. Highly recommend it. I'll be drinking it during the show tonight, so I'm not responsible for anything I say. Thank you to Andrew Height, our Vice President of Business Development, who put this all together. He does a great job for us. It's another reason we're growing so quickly. Alex Haugen is our producer. So thank you for being here. Let's have some fun with it. And now, Mark Rosen.
All right. Thanks, Jim. First of all, I can't tell you how excited I am to be a part of this enterprise and with these professionals. They are the best of the best, and I've known all these guys for a long time, and to have us all under one roof, as they say, is going to be a very exciting. My first venture into podcasting, really, and I'm excited for the present and for the future, and with the possibility, the limitless possibilities that I see in terms of engaging with people in a different format. You know, the TV thing was great for 50 years. Radio still is fun, except when I work with Common every day. And then, but that it's still, this is something that I really look forward to because you can kind of expand my horizons a little bit and get different guests on different levels of not just sports, but other parts of our society as well. But tonight, we're here to talk a lot of sports with these gentlemen in particular who are so good at what they do. And I have such a great following in the Twin Cities. You know, I had all good intentions of starting out, since the Twins are starting their season, of talking baseball right away. And we'll get to it. We'll get to all the sports before we're done. With the ownership situation, television situation, the team itself, of course. But then, shocking, the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, decided to hold a rare news conference. At which time, you know, I mean, I'm thinking, and I spoke to Jim Souhan about it a little earlier. I went, what was his motivation for doing this? And then, unless his arm was twisted and got talked into it. You know, everybody knew they had a good offseason. They signed some great players for offensive line, defensive line in particular. But he knew damn well most of the line of questioning was going to be about a guy who's not here. It's about Aaron Rodgers. And sure enough, the question came up over and over and over again. So as I turned to the panel, I think the question is, and Kwesi addressed it today, the elephant in the room, when he talked about KOC, Kevin O'Connell, not being there, but also his exact quote was, they have had a lot of conversations, meaning Kevin O'Connell and Aaron Rodgers. So we kept hearing, and John, I know you've been covering this a lot. We'll start with you. You know, this is maybe an indication of the where we are as social media, the way reporters cover it nationally, locally, how you weigh in on this. But he put a stamp on it. He didn't make it sound like A-Rod was going to pull a Brett Favre and be here, you know, at the end of July. But he certainly did not deny the fact that they've had conversations.
Yeah, Rosie, it's been kind of a crazy situation because I think some of my partners at The Athletic, Diana Rossini, Alec Lewis, Mike Silver, like they've really pushed out there that this was a possibility, that they were seriously considering bringing Aaron Rodgers in. And I have never seen a fan base kind of lash out at the reporters as much as they have in this situation. I've been in the firing squad a lot, in my tenure, but everyone kind of are blaming Alec, Diana, Albert Breer, a few others that have put out there that they are interested just because they don't like Aaron Rodgers. And what we saw from Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah today was that absolutely 100% they have had real conversations about bringing him in. Now, it has not gotten to, here is a contract, Aaron, we want you to come here. But there's certainly real mulling going on. They're thinking about, is JJ ready? They're thinking about what Rodgers could do for them. And this is a real storyline that is going to continue until Rodgers signs with the Steelers or JJ McCarthy just really takes hold of the job. And I think that that's going to take a long time to play out.
Well, none of us are going to know that, Jim, until obviously the end of training camp. I remember the Favre story quite well. You do too. And he didn't even show up for training camp. So is Rodgers in a position to hold? I mean, there aren't, it's musical chairs of NFL quarterbacks and teams. The Steelers are about the only team left. They got Mason Rudolph as their starting quarterback. They could certainly draft someone, but the music's about to stop.
I'm going to lash out at John Krawczynski and all of his colleagues
Please
now.
Please do. Come on.
No, I'm not. A lot of good reporters have reported that this is going on. I'm not going to say it's not. It's crazy. It's bonkers. This guy, he's old. He's a pain in the butt. He, 2 years ago, signed on as a aging quarterback who's going to put the Jets over the top. What did everybody say? The Jets have a great roster. All they need is a quarterback. First play, or first quarter, whatever, he gets hurt, he's out for the year. Bring him back next year. Great roster. Now he's been in the system for a year. Man, this is going to be great. They went 5-12. They went 5-12 and wasted draft capital trading for Devontae Adams. It was a disaster.
Hey, what did Sam Darnold do with the Jets?
Sam Darnold.
He wasn't an aging. He wasn't an.
What did he do? What did he do?
He wasn't an aging guy who was trying to salvage the last couple years of his career. Darnold was young.
I'm just saying.
He was seeing ghosts.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Darnold was with the Jets when they were terrible. This was actually supposed to be a good team.
I do have a question, though.
Go ahead.
To your
Michael.
original point, what would be the motivation today of him to, other than validating the great reporting by our colleagues, what would be the motivation to put this in JJ's head right now? I don't understand why to make this a continued storyline where he didn't put it to bed today. He basically said, JJ, if you flounder, this is here waiting in the wings, a Hall of Famer. It just seems like this is not the proper way to go into a season with a young quarterback that you expect to be your franchise quarterback. I don't understand what the motivation was to not at least say, look, we've decided we're going with JJ.
Yeah, he lit the fuse a little bit more, LaVelle, and this is not a story that's going to go away anytime soon, I don't believe. And the Vikings aren't going to get anything settled. This is, the training camp doesn't start till the end of July, and Aaron Rodgers, I don't think has the desire to come in and mentor JJ McCarthy. If he's going to come here, he's going to start. Right?
Look, we are headed to the spring and summer of skepticism here over this whole case because it's going to be out there. Rodgers is not going to sign anytime early because then he has to go to OTAs and get to know people. He's going to do what he did last year with the Jets when he was out going to some concerts and party in Europe while the Jets were trying to prepare for a season. And that's one of the reasons why it's dangerous to even touch this guy. But Rodgers is going to let this play out. The Vikings are going to sign a veteran quarterback. They're going to add a veteran quarterback somewhere to the roster. I don't know if it's Rodgers. It could be Brian Tannehill. It could be Case Keenum for all we know. Right? I know it's this. As a fan, I'd be incredibly nervous about this guy tearing up the clubhouse, trying to take over the team, trying to become the offensive coordinator and the general manager. The beat writer, columnist, reporter in me would love Aaron Rodgers to be here. He would give me 5 to 10 columns a year easily, or 5 to 10 columns a month maybe, for all the chaos he could perform here. So this is just beginning. Kwesi did nothing to quell this today, and he's just going to, the anxiety meter in this mark over the possibility of Rodgers, real or not, him appearing in a purple uniform.
I'm a huge JJ guy. Like, I love McCarthy. He was one of my favorite guys in the draft. That said, all this says and everything that they have done from a messaging standpoint is we wonder about JJ McCarthy. And not necessarily is he going to be great years down the road, but this is a roster now that is going to go into this season expecting to contend for a deep playoff run, maybe even a Super Bowl with all of the free agents that they've signed and everything. McCarthy missed all of last year. There is questions about how will he be ready to lead a team at this level and win at this level. And so that's what they are telling us, even if we don't want to hear that. The Vikings are saying, we are not sure if J.J. McCarthy is ready.
Here's a question for you, J.K. What do you think about this? The Vikings won, 15 games last year?
I think so.
Early Vegas props have them at 6.5 wins. That's what the J.J. McCarthy era is starting out in terms of Vegas prognostication.
Wait, right now?
Yes. It came out. I got a guy in Vegas, big surprise, today who went up and looked at props for me. 6.5 wins, over under.
How much should you put down?
Yeah.
So in the meantime, all you guys in agreement? Are the Vikings going to move on a backup quarterback, a Joe Flacco or Ryan Tannehill? Will they bring one of those guys in long before they get to camp? Or are they going to wait this thing out a little bit longer?
Why do they have to do it now? That's
They don't.
That's what I would guess. Like, I would say they're going to string this out as long as they can. If Rodgers is still a possibility, there's no reason to pull the trigger on someone else until you know that that ship is totally sailed.
But Jim, nothing's going to happen between now and they got OTAs, you got minicamp. You know, J.J. McCarthy's going to throw the ball around. No one's going to touch him. No one's going to rush him. I mean, you're not going to find out. I mean, you're going to find out he's physically able to play the game of football right now, but they're not going to solve anything until August.
They're not going to solve anything, and this is really what Aaron Rodgers wants. If he could create a situation, it would be this. The Steelers are now desperate. They have no other options.
Right.
He has them over a barrel. He spent 6 hours at the facility and didn't sign.
Correct.
The Giants need him too, so he's got leverage with the Giants. Now he has created leverage. Whatever you think the likelihood of him actually signing with the Vikings at some point, he's created leverage by having the Vikings involved even as a tertiary option. He loves this. And now he can do whatever he wants all summer, be in the headlines, whether he talks about it or not, be in the headlines more when he doesn't talk about it. This is perfect for him.
Yeah. And Michael, you've dealt with enough general managers in the sport of hockey in a lot of levels, and you know how information gets funneled many times through agents, through the GMs. So from your experience, I mean, do you think this was kind of predetermined today that Kwesi wanted to kind of get this out there? And
he had to have some motivation to do it today, and I totally agree with Johnny too that clearly the message is that they're not trusting right now that at the situation that they are in and with the expectations here that JJ this year is going to be able to lead them to maybe where they think. So, but you know, this guy's down in Mexico golfing right now with Case Keenum and Harrison Smith and these guys, and you just now he's going on social media, as we know he's very apt to do, and reading about all this today. It just seems like putting all this stuff in his head is bizarre to me. The other thing, as you mentioned with the backup quarterback situation and signing guys, in a land of no guaranteed contracts, I mean, if they all of a sudden Rodgers came to fruition, you could just theoretically get rid of whoever you got, right?
Why is Case Keenum playing on a Vikings team at an NFLPA golf tournament?
Well, Thielen is too. So maybe
he has nothing else to do.
He got nothing else to do is right at all. So,
but they're going to hit it off, and maybe isn't there a March 28th deadline too, where you don't have to give up a compensatory pick?
Yeah,
so
after
maybe
the draft.
So maybe in a couple of days we'll see them sign a Flacco or Tannehill.
But John Krawczynski, you said something at the outset too that you used the word Super Bowl. That this team, after watching what happened the final two games against Detroit, in particular against the Rams, where Sam Darnold just got bulldozed, that they've made enough improvements with at least on paper, the offensive line, defensive line, to make them competitive, even though, as LaVelle said, the Vikings are picked to finish last right now in the NFC North for no other reason than J.J. McCarthy's never played a game. But do you feel that this team and the front office is in that mode right now of win now?
Yeah, I do think so. I don't think that they're looking at any kind of a gap year step back as you kind of transition to McCarthy. I think one of the ideas in drafting a young quarterback is that you have the financial resources to go out and sign a bunch of other free agents and really beef up the team around him if that is the quarterback that you end up going into battle with, and you have a better offensive line, you have weapons all around him, you have a better defense, and so they're ready to go. Now, of course, you'd have real questions about, is a second-year player who didn't play at all in his rookie season ready to lead them to a Super Bowl? But from a talent standpoint, the rest of the roster, stack it up against anyone in the NFC, other than maybe Philadelphia and maybe Detroit, from a talent standpoint, they're right there.
They've had a good offseason, too.
Yeah, they've had a huge offseason.
Well, look what the rookie quarterbacks did last year in the NFL for the most part.
That's
Starting
right.
with Jaden Daniels, even the Bo Nix.
Yes.
Okay, Caleb Williams. Poor Caleb. He
We
had
don't
no
need
one
to
to
put
help
Caleb
him.
Williams in that category.
No, he's not there. He's not there.
He threw for over 3,000 yards. He threw 5 picks on
Did
that.
you watch the
Congratulations.
games?
I
Congratulations.
watched all of them, unfortunately. Matt Eberflus ruined him.
But yeah, no, it's a team that I think with good quarterback play should say they're in the conversation for the division, for a deeper run in the NFC, and even coming out of it, because I think they are that talented everywhere else on their roster.
Let's take all the chemistry issues out of the equation here. Do we think that Aaron Rodgers can help the Vikings win?
So I think that McCarthy is better right now, a better option talent-wise than Aaron Rodgers. Now, that's me. Like, that's Michigan fan John Krawczynski and going that way. But I understand why they would have some trepidation about it.
This whole thing reminds me of when the Wild years ago tried to sign Mike Modano, and it was close between him and Detroit right at the end. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And we both thought it was the same thing, I think, as a lot of the fans. We thought Modano was kind of using the Wild to leverage the Red Wings. He eventually signed with the Red Wings. The Wild signed like John Madden a couple days later. But this whole thing, like, it just, to me, to your point originally, is like, this is not Aaron Rodgers when he was on Green Bay. This is a very different quarterback. And I just think you've invested so much into this kid. Unfortunately, he had the unbelievable injury last year. I just think give him a shot. And to play mental games with him right now by doing this press conference today, the whole thing was bizarre to me.
I agree. I didn't understand the motivation. He wasn't there to talk about the new free agents. No one cared about talking about that. And I can never imagine if Rick Spielman was still the GM saying, oh, by the way, Brad Childers had this long conversation with Brett Favre or whomever.
And by the way, we're still interested. You know, it's essentially
yeah,
what he was saying.
exactly.
Like,
it's not going away.
I think Kwesi is, well, he's highly intelligent. He is not yet media savvy. And it's funny, people who deal with us and hold press conferences and are in front of us all the time, there's an art to it, and there's a knowledge about how things will be reacted to in the modern era. And I think Kwesi just kind of gets up there and says, I'm going to be a nice guy, and here's what I think. I don't think he really thinks through what the reaction will be.
And he's going to tell you that he used to trade stocks.
Yeah.
Oh, remember we talked about it earlier. Remember when he said something about Kirk Cousins? Well, he's no Patrick Mahomes,
right.
But we got Kirk Cousins.
It's a statement of truth, and yet it's a statement of truth he shouldn't be making in the context of being a leader of his organization.
Yeah. I will say, though, that's also a very difficult position that we put him in, because he says, well, Kirk Cousins is no Patrick Mahomes. We say, how can you say that about Kirk Cousins? Of course he's no Patrick Mahomes.
Everybody knows that.
Like,
exactly.
Get him coming and going.
Well, let's switch gears here, and I don't want to dwell on one aspect of it, LaVelle. I'm talking to you specifically about the Twins situation and the ownership, but it struck me, and I just went, wait a minute. Obviously, they're trying to sell this baseball team, and whether or not there's an owner ready to close the deal or not remains to be seen. But Joe Pohlad wants to still control, was that the right word, control the team if possible? I do not in the least understand how this would work out if another buyer bought it and Joe Pohlad would still have some sort of say in the day-to-day operation.
The Twins, from the day that they announced that they were exploring the sale, I was getting indications that Joe was the one who was outvoted by the family. He still wants to try to give it a go and make it work. So that's always been out there as this process has gone along. And here's the thing, the Twins end up being pulled off the market, he's going to end up running the team. So they may be in a situation where he's going to be around regardless if the fan base likes it or not. But I think he's made some verbal missteps along the way. I think he's made some mistakes now that he's tried to explain things and package things and talking about right-sizing the payroll. And and failing to warn the fan base of what was coming down the pike in terms of television coverage before the beginning of last year. And those things, I think, stick. So if I'm a Twins fan, I'd be irked by that, but I'd be more concerned that because a certain media website reported that there's $432 million in debt.
Right.
That, to me, that hurts the possibility of
What website was that?
Some media outlet. I think it's New York Times, maybe.
It's funny how that works. Yeah, little paper out of New York.
Yeah, but $400 million of debt on top of uncertain television package, on top of a possible work stoppage after the 2026 season, looks like the Twins should have taken that $1.5 million offer they received. Now, I do have it on good source that the group that was turned down, they don't believe they're out of it. So there's still a little bit of legs to this thing. So we'll see how this plays out. If they can get 1.7, more power to them. I think they should be settled at 1.5. And by the way, Forbes came out with his valuations of MLB franchises today, and the Twins are ranked 23rd at $1.5 billion.
Oh, all right. Well,
we have a couple of the weirdest sales going on in the Twin Cities right now.
Yeah,
We have Glenn
works so
Taylor that
well.
will just not hand over
Yeah.
the Timberwolves. We got
Right.
this thing going.
Joe must have taken a page out of Glenn's book because it's worked so well. So
how much interest is there in this baseball team, and what's it going to take? I mean, I keep thinking 2 years ago I went those games and they finally won a playoff series, and how brimming with excitement Target Field was when they knocked off Houston. And I was like, this is what I remember, and this is what I was hoping for. Even when they had the home field advantage against the Yankees when they first opened up Target Field, it didn't work out very well. That series was amazing. Unfortunately, they didn't carry it through, and then they cut payroll. And I was like, pop the balloon. Let's just remind people that we're not ever going to play with the big boys. So now we're starting over again, and they got a nice nucleus if they stay healthy, and that's always a big if, Jim. But, I mean, I don't know where the Twins stand right now in terms of people day-to-day paying attention to it. Obviously, it's not a box score world we live in. It's a fantasy sports world we live in where people are just checking their fantasy players. They're not looking at box scores. There's no more sporting news. And none of that stuff that I grew up and you grew up with.
I think the Twins have primed the fan base to anticipate disappointment. So if they win and they keep winning, people will come to the ballpark, the ratings will go up, they'll be fine. As soon as they have a downturn, then the story becomes poll ads, sale, and even with the nice victory in 2022, still a recent history of not being competitive in the postseason.
the problem is that the ownership has told the fans that they don't really want to win. And when you exude that kind of a message to your fan base, why is the fan base incentivized to get interested in this? They had an unbelievable moment in the postseason a few years ago.
Right.
And then they backed it off. And that's just like, that is sending a message to the entire market that we don't really take this seriously. That if we can make some money, that's the priority number one, and that's it. And so it's such a toxic environment for the ownership with setting that tone that it's hard for a talented team to get through that unless, like Jim said, they're really breaking through and winning a ton of games.
Yeah, they can win their division, LaVelle. I don't think there's any question about that. But, I mean, they can certainly compete for the divisional title.
It's a good roster. It's still a good roster. When you have quality players with Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa leading the way. Those guys are, if they're on the field, I know if is a big word. If it was a fifth, we all be hammered right now. But they're 5 WAR players and above if they play a majority of the season and able to lead their team. They have a solid rotation, especially their top 3 guys, and their bullpen's considered one of the best in baseball. This team's going to be competitive in the division, and in the improving division. With the Royals rising and the Tigers being surprised last year. But the Twins could still be a good team in this mix and make it interesting. The AL Central is going to be good this year. And as long as the Twins can keep their guys on the field for most of the season, they're going to be right there. And I think they can win the division. And that would help people forget the bad messaging that's gone on with this franchise the last couple of years.
We all know about NFL players because we watch them in college. We know about NBA players. We watch them if they're in college, and we know when they get to the pros. Major League Baseball and Michael Russo, the NHL. I mean, they both need to do a better job of marketing their players around the country. I mean, we know about the big names, but you know everybody intimately. But when you talk about hockey all the time and you're breaking down potential players for the Wild even after this year, I really got to pay attention. I'm going, oh, yeah, I've heard of that guy, but I don't really know much about him.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is access now, too, which I think all four of us could probably attest to. That, I mean, you don't get as much time with these guys. They never practice. The locker room's in and out. You don't get a lot of access to do the storytelling that we're all used to doing. To your point, in Major League, in basketball and football, you know all these players from their college careers. These are amateur drafts, so you don't really know these guys. And the problem that perennially we've always had in hockey, and it's a culture thing, is that they don't want to sell themselves. And I think the league is doing a much better job of having the Amazon series and trying to market these guys, but they also have to put themselves out there to really show their personalities. And that's why I just covered the Four Nations last month, and I will say that the guys there just did a tremendous job of one, giving us incredible access on a daily basis, but letting their personalities shine. And I think that's a problem that we always see in both the sports that you're talking about. That's why I got a chance to meet Royce Lewis last year, and I was blown away about what a great dude this guy was.
He's the best.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that, again, he's starting off hurt. So
since
something in the water here in the Twin Cities there,
no
with the
kidding.
injuries.
Well, since we're talking injuries, there's a guy named Kirill Kaprizov who's been waiting to, every Wild fan who has been in attendance and watching the games and not really getting any information other than, I think finally this week we hear that he's almost close to returning to skate along with Joel Eriksson Ek. And, we know that the team has zero chance unless they get those guys back. How frustrating is it for you when you cover the team to kind of have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis when everyone in your circle and your following wants to know?
Yeah, the one thing, like Bill has always been pretty private about and not transparent when it comes to injuries, but this is the first year where we're not even getting timelines, and everybody's week to week, but we're running out of weeks here. There's 10 games left in the season. The good news is, and I've been reporting this consistently since about March 6th, which is the day before the trade deadline, that I was hearing that there was a strict timeline with him, with Kirill in particular, that 3 weeks from that day that he would be on the ice, which coincidentally is tomorrow. And I do believe that he's going to be on the ice tomorrow with Eriksson Ek tomorrow. So at least that's the beginning. But the question is, how much leeway time, the playoffs, if they make it, starts April 19th. And this is a guy that, made it extremely clear when they played Dallas a couple years ago that when he missed 11 of the final 13, he missed 13 straight games, and then they sat him out 2 of the last 4, that he just went into the playoffs rusty and wasn't himself. And so, there's a difference between being back in the lineup and giving them a jolt, and are you up to the standards that you feel that you could play in and be impactful? And that would be my biggest concern right now, is like, I don't doubt that they are going to come back. The question is, where are they right now in the standings at that point? And then, how good are they in the playoffs when they're going up against, they're going to play, whether it's Winnipeg, Vegas, or Dallas in the first round, and those 3 teams torch them even when they're healthy. So,
right.
There's not a lot of confidence right now in the fan base going into the postseason. A lot of it has to do with what you're just talking about.
Well, your friend Lou Nanne was saying it's more important, I think, in the context that should they have put Kaprizov on long-term disability, brought another player up potentially to fill his salary. He said it's more important to sign Kirill Kaprizov to a long-term deal than it is to make the playoffs this year. Interesting point he made on that.
Yeah, who said? I'm sorry, who said
that? Was Lou Nanne,
Lou said
new guy in town.
I mean, I think that this is the one thing that is very clear with Kirill is what we're seeing right now on the ice proves his value and makes him, like, there are a lot of people that keep on tweeting me and asking me, like, do you not sign him now because he's essentially this is 3 years in a row of being hurt, and I think it's the opposite. I think this team is absolutely unentertaining without him, and they can't score clearly. And just his impact in the lineup makes everybody else better. I mean, Matt Boldy has absolutely disintegrated here the last 2-3 months. Marco looks like a tired hockey player. So I think it just further shows his importance to getting this guy signed. So whether making the playoffs or not, they got to make the playoffs. I mean, that when you give up your first-round pick and a second, a third, and a fourth for a guy that you're not even playing, and now, they sent him back to the minors in Eurocheck, and he hurt his spleen. You got to make the playoffs this year.
Right.
But you also got to re-sign Kirill. The other thing, just to make a longer story short, is, the people out there that keep on saying, well, why would Crow want to re-sign here now? I look at it the opposite approach. The Wild are going to offer him $120 million this summer. That's if he gets hurt again next year and has a recurrence of whatever he's dealing with, like that money might not be there, whether it's from the Wild or a free agent. When that money is sitting in front of him on July 1, I think that's awfully enticing. And so I really genuinely believe that they're going to still offer him and make him the highest paid winger in the NHL. And I think this puts if it were me, I would sign.
This is the kind of stuff
too.
you get when you listen to TalkNorth.com. Michael Russo does Worst Seats in the House with Anthony LaPanta. John Krawczynski does the cleverly named John Krawczynski Show on the Timberwolves.
It's a nice ring to it.
How pompous, man!
It just rolls off the tongue.
It really Krawczynski always rolls off the tongue.
Are you your own title sponsor?
Absolutely.
John and I
Money
also
goes straight to my pocket.
John and I also argue regularly about Aaron Rodgers on the Viking Update Show. We have Jeff Diamond, the former Vikings general manager, on the network. LaVelle is part of our Chin Music Baseball Show with Roy Smalley and myself. Mark Rosen, his first show on the network, other than this, his Rosen Sports Monday will drop on Monday. He was stuck with me as the first guest, but he will improve. He has some really big names lined up there.
I feel like I was on one of your last shows of Rosen Sports Sunday. It was like me, Cheryl Reeve, and Waylon, if I believe.
I think, Waylon was on.
Yeah,
I think I had Mike Beck on as my last guest as well, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I only got on one time. I had to beg and plead, and that was it.
I only went for the chase on the lake gift certificate, so that was.
Yes.
That was
man.
We also have Don Mitchell's show. We have Mike Grimm on the Gophers. We have Bar Down Beauties on hockey. We have Kevin Gorg on hockey. We've got a lot of shows.
You got them all loaded up.
So check it out at TalkNorth.com. I always say we had the best sports lineup in town. That was before we got Mark Rosen, so things are really rolling now. We also want to thank the people who make this all possible. Parlay Kitchen and Bar, that's where we are tonight. Thank you all for showing up. We plan to do these shows quarterly, and we'll might cycle through some different guests each time, but you get the idea. Again, it's great to have Mark hosting this. Parlay Kitchen and Bar. Mark had the brisket for dinner beforehand. I'm going to get either the
Outstanding.
brisket. Yeah, I'm going to get either the brisket or the tacos to go later. We are drinking Giggly. Giggly.com is what you see in front of us. It's what you see with the signage. It's available at pretty much all the liquor stores around town, Total Wine, MGM, Cub Foods. It's at all the Quick Trips. Or you can go to Giggly.com, Gigli.com. They do ship nationwide. And here's the spiel. Ready to upgrade your drink game? Grab a 4-pack to take home today. Use the code GIGLY-NORTH, Gigli North, to get 50% off your first order. And I can attest to it. I drink this stuff all the time. No hangover. It's like really good. It's like a blend of it tastes like a cocktail, but it's really made out of fruit juice. You'll never get a hangover. Mark doesn't drink, so he's going to start hitting it. My wife loves the teas. I highly recommend it. And Mark, I think you had one other sponsor you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I want to mention. I'm thrilled when we start the Rosen Sports Monday. Charlie Swanson, my friend from Lexus, is going to be sponsoring as well. Lexus of Wayzata, Lexus of Maplewood, and Charlie's a big sports fan in town and just a terrific guy. Most of these guys on the panel know him quite well. He was very active with the Timberwolves community as well, of course, with the Lexus Club and golfing and doing he's just running all over the place. But we're really thrilled, and we got a bunch of other good sponsors lined up as well. So I'm excited about that. All you guys can weigh in on this. I want to continue on with Michael a little bit on since we've been talking Wild hockey, and we've been hearing for, I guess, 9 years now, as soon as the Parisi-Suter contracts are null and void and they're out of the books, watch out. Here we come. Bill Guerin and Craig Leopold are going to be opening their checkbooks and going after everybody except Alex Ovechkin and Connor McDavid. So, I mean, what's fact, what's fiction? Where do we sit with this, and how much can we expect the Wild, how active can we expect them to be during this next off season?
I think he's going to have to get bold this year because, again, a large part of this core is going to be back. And, right now, they were, like they often are, really good at the first half of the season, and then they've been inundated with injuries and have completely, started to kill their season here. What's real and what's fact? The cap is going up a lot in the next 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. Not a ton next year. when they made the Fiala trade, they never thought that in Brock Faber he would immediately get $8.5 million. That goes on the books next year. Middleton goes on the books next year. They have some $2 or $3 million players leaving right now, but I don't think that they have the unlimited cap space that fans always thought, and that's why. And then the other thing is that you look at free agency, and there's not a lot of great names out there to begin with. So I think for him to turn this team into a contender very quickly, he's going to have to get bold with some big-time trades and go out and try to get some studs, and preferably young studs, because I know that Bill likes to go get his veterans and fill the team with bottom six guys. I think that's probably big-time problem right now. The second, third, and fourth lines are just stacked with third and fourth liners, and then we wonder why they can't score.
You mentioned Marco Rossi. Is he a name that potentially could be traded?
Yep. I think there's a very good chance right now. I think they're on different universes in terms of what his value is. I think that he is looking at it as like, I'm the number one center in this team. I'm 23 years old. I'm looking what's going on around the league. I'm a homegrown guy here, drafted and developed, and I'm a different position than Matt Boldy. So when the Wild maybe look at him and say on a long-term deal, we don't want to give you more than Matt Boldy, he's saying, well, Matt Boldy signed 2 years ago. When I say he, by the way, don't think that Marco's the one saying this. This is his representatives. This is the way that they are looking at it. And right now they look at him as a $8 million player north, and the Wild definitely don't think that. So I don't think that they're going to go there. If they get something done, it's going to have to be a bridge deal. The Wild, I think, would sign him right now at, say, 5 times 5. But I don't think that his agent is really intrigued by that right now.
Maybe it took watching his performance in Montreal, but what's it been like to be around Marc-Andre Fleury when you appreciate his greatness and what he's done in his career, and watching him at the tail end of it here? Let's take it for granted. He has good nights, bad nights, but one of the greatest to ever play goalie.
Yeah, and it's and he's handling what's going on with him now very maturely. I mean, yesterday was his first game in 20-something days.
71 years old. He should be mature. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, but I could tell you that they didn't put him in a great position to succeed yesterday. I still think that he played really well. But to get to your point, I mean, he is the absolute best. He treats everybody with so much respect. Fans, media, everybody alike. Like what you see, he is exactly what is not only advertised, but what you see every time you watch an interview with him. And it's truly been great to be, able to document the last, 4 or 5 years of his NHL career. I've long been, friendly with him too, for just years of covering the league. And I think that the culture that he has helped bring here, and how proud he is to play for this organization, and how proud his teammates are to have him in the organization, I think, really says everything about him.
Yeah, it's rare, guys, when you see we have an athlete like that. We've had some great athletes finish their careers here, kind of the tail end, and it goes out with a whimper more than anything else. But we've had a bunch in every sport. But it's really something when you watch that game in Montreal and the admiration fans have for him.
That's the way I don't know. Like, there's not a fan base in this 32-team league that doesn't love this guy. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And you don't get that with most players in any pro sport. There's always guys that go somewhere and they're booed. There's always guys that leave a team and they go back and they're booed. And that never happens with Marc-Andre. I mean, he's getting honored in buildings that he's never played in, that he's never played for, and it just shows how much people admire him.
All right, Michael, we're going to talk some basketball, so go have some dinner.
I covered the Miami Heat.
Yeah, he was one of us early on.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Here.
And I will say I've watched more Wolves games this year than I have in probably.
We're sorry.
On TV or in person?
Yeah, I mean,
not in person, on TV.
Yeah, you guys can cover it all. That is for sure. But the Timberwolves. I mean, I mentioned Johnny Krawczynski and Johnny Athletic, that I thought this team on paper right now had more talent than they did a year ago. But it doesn't mean they're going to get it nearly as far as they did a year ago when they went to the Western Conference Finals. Slow-Mo's not here anymore. They made some other, obviously, Big Meow's not here anymore. But it's hard to get a handle on this team and who they are, what their identity is, what they're capable of. I know they had a tough practice. They got Phoenix here Friday night, and then the bell rings in a short time. And are they going to be able to turn it on and be that consistent team that Chris Finch has been begging for? That and you get sick and tired of hearing the players go, well, they tried harder than we did. What?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I don't know what we're going to see, but like, I actually think that one of the issues that they've faced in this stretch where they've faced really poor or below 500 teams, that's actually worked against them. They're not mature enough as a group to just kind of run through these guys like they should as a bulldozer and pad these wins. And actually, as the competition increases, both the rest of the way in the regular season and then if they're getting into the playoffs, that's when the team actually really locks in. I would be surprised if on Friday night against Durant and Booker, they don't actually look better than they have in the last 2 weeks. And so it's a team that rides a roller coaster very maddeningly, because literally all they need is 2 or 3 more wins and they'd be in 5th place right now. And instead they have put themselves in this position of having to scratch and claw and fight. And we just don't know night to night what you're going to see from these guys.
Is Anthony Edwards, guys, kind of a modern day, a new version of Randy Moss at his age? I mean, from a maturity standpoint, a talent standpoint, and just, charismatic, all the things that Randy Moss was, enigmatic. I mean, just, all that wrapped up into an extremely talented person.
I think they're very different. I covered Moss from, his first day as a Viking and got yelled at him quite a bit. And Anthony, there's some signs of immaturity, and he's still trying to figure out the game and how to be a superstar and all that. But there's never a question. He's not selling out people in the organization. He's a good teammate. He plays hard. He always wants to play hard. With the caveat that he doesn't always get back on defense because he's arguing calls, but you see effort.
Right.
He's put an incredible amount of work in. Randy had some of those things. He certainly worked hard. He was certainly a good teammate to some of his teammates, but he could also destroy your locker room in 5 seconds. Here's the difference. Randy Moss walked off the field during a game with the Vikings in playoff contention.
Right.
Anthony Edwards would not do that.
Well, that says it all. I mean,
that's right. I think he's like, one of the things that you see about Ant is, for all of his youthful foibles that he has, every teammate wants to run through a wall for him. He is one of the ultimate team first guys. Anytime that attention comes on him, he deflects it elsewhere and wants to talk about his teammates and wants to get him. There are certainly veterans on the team that get frustrated with some of the shot selection, that kind of wring their hands a little bit and want him to be a little further along in his understanding of the game than he is. But they all look at him as someone who has a good heart, who has the right intentions, who wants the best for himself, but for the team. And so that's why they continue to ride with him. And that's why eventually, maybe it's not this year, maybe he's 25, 26, 27. I really think he does break through, and you see an MVP type season. You see a team that maybe goes to the finals on his back.
The Vikings traded Randy Moss during his prime,
right,
for a 1 draft pick and an average linebacker who was only going to be there for a year or two. They didn't trade him for football reasons. That's a crazy deal. Insane to make that deal on basis of football. They traded him because they couldn't get through a meeting with him in the building. They traded him because he was the loudest voice in the organization, and everybody else knew they couldn't function as long as he was there. Anthony Edwards is nothing like that.
Well, KG was kind of like that. I mean, at times, was he not? I mean, he
yes.
Yeah, I mean, he demanded, I remember him telling Glenn Taylor that we got to sign Will Avery to a long-term deal or whatever.
Trent Hassel, Troy Hudson. Yeah. Yep.
Troy Hudson.
Look, KG, there's no one that played harder. There's no one that gave the fans more value for their buck on their ticket, because night in and night out, you knew out there that he was going to be out there and he was going to be given everything that he possibly had. But behind the scenes, he could be difficult. But that is the one thing about NBA superstars, is so many of them are difficult in their own way, shape, and form, whether it's KG, whether it's LeBron, whether it was Kobe, whether it was Shaq, whether any of the very top of the top guys are very difficult to deal with sometimes because they are their own corporations. And that so far is what separates Ant. Steph Curry is in that group of guys, of superstars that are easier to deal with. But even Giannis, we saw Luka traded. We've seen all of these guys that you just have to hold on tight and buckle yourself in because it is going to be a wild ride. But you know what? Generally speaking, these guys are so impactful that you just have to swallow hard and do it. And that's what you had to do with KG. That's what they had to do with Moss for a while, and they stopped doing it. But Ant has not put that stress on the organization like a lot of these other guys right now.
But Ant could go ahead and be Ant. He's a danger around a hot mic. But he has to understand, too, that the intensity they use to me, their marquee win was coming back in OKC. You can't go from there and then losing twice to Indiana in the last, 10 days. Yeah. He's got to realize that I got to figure out how to keep these guys on the same edge that we needed to win against a high-quality team and then throw out clunkers against
LaVelle,
the Pacers.
You're the expert on ownership, so tell us about Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez. What is, once the NBA Board of Governors puts their stamp on it, we assume they're going to if all their ducks are in a row and the finances are set, kind of what's their long-range plan besides getting a new arena and for the team's perspective?
Well, I remember the day that this layaway plan was announced, which will never be made again in the NBA, that I asked A-Rod about that. And he said, we want to do everything first class. And he's coming in with those type of expectations. Of course, that means an arena is a big component of that. But, taking care of the players and their families and having a top-notch organization is also part of that as well. What does that look like? I'm not sure. We also have to remember, too, that it was leaked that part of their plans for operating the team was the sliced payroll to get under that apron, the second apron. And Glenn was willing to pay the tax because he's finally got a team that's winning. So that's got to be a little bit of concern about how they're going to operate from a fiscal standpoint. Of course, that's before, I believe, Michael Bloomberg came on board, so maybe that's not much of a hindrance. But it's going to be interesting because really we don't know because we don't know. They don't have much of a history of sports owners or in sports. Definitely Lowry, A-Rod, baseball. So it's up to the Board of Governors to meet with them and decide if they're legit or not. And Glenn hasn't come out and said he's not going to appeal either. Are we right? Are we sure that he's not going to appeal this deal or not? Or I know he was recovering from a medical procedure, so I don't know if that's going to hit him or not.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've heard is I don't anticipate that he is going to appeal. He has until sometime in May to really declare that, so he can take his own sweet time with it, and I don't think he's any rush to hand this thing over.
Why?
Because if he lost, he's like, I might as well. He could theoretically go through most of the playoffs as the owner of this team.
I got you.
And if he wants to go out on some sort of a high note, this is his way of doing it. It also was a very bitter dispute between the two sides. Neither side likes each other very much at all. And so I think that one of the things that Glenn has been in his business life is ruthless. And so he is, I don't think, in any rush to hand the baton to the new owners as they are going into the playoffs and potentially if they have some success. And I mean, one thing about Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry, it is going to be a transition from prospective owners to real owners. Once you're in that seat, you're cutting those checks, we will see how you operate. But to this point, they have followed through on everything they said they were going to do, including something that is really difficult to do, which is win a legal fight against Glenn Taylor. There's not many people who have been able to pull that off. These two have done it. And so they are kind of biding their time and waiting for the opportunity to take over. And I think they're going to be very aggressive when they do. But we'll see how that goes. But so far to this point, they have done exactly what they said they were going to do, including beating an almost unbeatable opponent.
And go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, we're heading into our last segment here. Once again, thanks for being here. If you're not familiar, Parlay Kitchen and Bar is the new downstairs area, now an upscale sports bar underneath the Union rooftop. Same company, same building, and they've renovated the place. We're looking at all the games on TV right now. Great place in downtown Minneapolis, 8th and Hennepin. There's parking right down the street in the ramp. There's street parking outside. You can get your car valeted. Highly recommend coming and hanging out here if you want to watch sports in downtown Minneapolis.
You want to
Great
hear one
spot.
thing that's really crazy? So 2005 September, this was rock bottom, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
This is where I first met with Glenn Crevier, the old
Wow.
editor of the Star
Full
Tribune.
circle.
My first ever interview. That the night that I
Wow.
flew in was in this place. Then the next day was when I met with you.
Where's the plaque? There's got to be a plaque still up someplace.
Remember the next day is when I went like from station to
That's
station.
when I
You and
went
I
to
went
lunch
to
with
like
you.
a Greek
Yep.
restaurant.
And Michael Russo, speaking of renovations, the XL Center apparently is in line as well with their handout. I don't know
Yeah,
what's
they're
going to
trying
happen
to
with
jump
the
the
They want
Wolves here.
$900 million
Man.
for a renovation, or are we just talking about tearing the thing down again like the Civic Center? Have you heard any scuttlebutt about this?
Yeah, tear it down to the studs.
No.
I mean, look, it's time, man. Like, I know that fans look at this building as still like incredibly gorgeous, and it's held up. It's 25 years old. There's so many parts of the arena that need to be upgraded. I mean, they barely have a club in there. I mean, all the frills that generate revenues that all these other buildings have, XL just doesn't have. They also have a locker room that's ancient as well. That nothing has been done into that locker room other than build a second-story gym since I've been covering the team.
Wow.
They have a video room where 3 guys have to sit on the floor and 2 other guys could, it's just, it is time. I know fans don't want to hear that. And of course they want Craig Leopold to pick up the entire tab. He doesn't own the building. He's just a tenant. If anybody, the city owns the building. So, I mean, they're trying to go obviously get money from the state, and their big task is getting there before, although the Wolves have said they want to do it 100%.
Again,
right?
they say they want to privately fund it. We'll see.
Yeah.
But that's what they say. And so
I can't believe that. So in high school, I covered Alex Rodriguez. That's how freaking old I am. I covered him as a high school baseball player, and now he owns the freaking Timberwolves.
Amazing.
you are
crazy.
very old. That's
I
for
know.
sure.
Trivia. Guess who his favorite receiver, his tight end, was in high school?
I know the answer, but I'm not.
Not Keith Jackson. That might
No,
have been early.
LaVelle knows.
Who was that now?
Doug McCavage.
Doug Minkiewicz.
That was his tight end.
They played at
Oh,
Westminster
there's a
Christian High
good
School
trivia
together.
And
question for you.
he played, I think, first base on those teams.
Yep.
I still remember covering those Westminster Christian. I mean, they won championship after championship back when the state championship was in Sarasota, then Fort Lauderdale. I just remember those teams. Rich Hoffman was their coach, and it was honestly like I remember the first time I covered Alex Rodriguez. My roommate at the time, Marty, who now works for the Columbus Blue Jackets, he's like, "Hey, you got to tell me how the shortstop is for Westminster Christian." I was going up.
He's all right.
I was going up, and they were playing Benjamin School, and he made a couple errors, struck out a couple times. I came out, I'm like, I don't know about this guy. Supposed to be the number 1 pick in the draft. Then I went back there for the second game of the series, and he had like a cycle. So yeah, it was.
And by the way, Minkiewicz, now, like everybody in baseball, hates Alex Rodriguez.
Oh, man.
Here's the thing, though. I feel bad for the sports fans and the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota because over the next 2 to 3 years, all these sports teams are going to be coming to the legislators for money because they want nearly $400 million from the state for the XL Arena, and they're smartly trying to package River Center and Watkins Arena for upgrades as well. The Twins are trying to get a tax extended to continue with the upkeep of Target Field into 2059. The Vikings want $200 million for something. I'm still not sure.
Hey, good luck with this. They can't
What
even keep Lunds and Barley's open in downtown St. Paul anymore.
A-Rod and Lori get the,
All of a sudden, you stay at the downtown Marriott here, and your taxes are like more than the room.
well, the daytime Marriott may get torn down to build a new arena if one person's wishes come true. And the Gophers may want a new barn. And we're headed into a $6 billion deficit. And all these sports teams are coming with requests.
They're paying Nico Medved too much. They don't have any money for
I think
a
what
barn.
it comes down to is all the championships that they keep on delivering the fans here in the
of course.
state. You gotta pay it. You gotta
Return
give
on
it
the
back.
investment, ROI.
All right, for our last segment, let's dive into, and there's so much to get into with this. The Gopher basketball team, and speaking of arenas and everything else, hired a new coach, as we all know, Nico Medved, with the Minnesota ties. Colorado State was in the NCAA tournament, came within an eyelash, maybe a travel of getting into the Sweet 16. But nevertheless, he's here. 1,000 players are already into the transfer portal in college basketball as we approach the Sweet 16. I want to get your guys' thoughts on the hire, but more importantly, what it represents, because how much power does a coach even have anymore to kind of run a program the way he wants to. I mean, Tom Izzo went off the other day on a reporter saying, look, I don't want to talk about that stuff. I owe it every ounce of my energy to the players who are here right now. All I'm thinking about is Mississippi, and our next opponent. Of course, Tom Izzo can say that stuff. But, this is the chaos that college sports is.
I'll give Mark Coyle credit for one thing. When Richard Pitino was hired, he was hired after 1 year as a head coach at a low major college team. Ben Johnson was brought in with no college basketball head coaching experience, and I think it showed. All right. Nico has turned around Furman, and he's turned around Colorado State. And he was at Colorado State for 6 or 7 years and reeled off a bunch of 21 seasons by then. So from that aspect, I'm all for this hire. All right. The thing with Coyle that bugs me is that in this NIL money era that we are in college sports, I don't see Coyle beating down the doors or glad-handing people who are working to generate donations to the program to help these sports as much as he should. And I think that's a deficiency on his part. I think we're also headed to an era where they may need a general manager to kind of spearhead some of that stuff as well, because coaches have to recruit the portal now as much as they recruit high school kids. And It's going to cost you millions of dollars per year to have a successful basketball program or a football program. And I just wish Coyle was more out front in the community, talking to some of these Fortune 500 companies here about support and go for athletics. I think that's the next step that needs to happen. In addition to hiring Medved, that's the next step that needs to happen for the program.
So Mark Coyle does not cut an imposing figure. He doesn't speak publicly much. He gets blamed for a lot. He probably deserves to get blamed for some of it. I'll just say this. This is what's surprising to me. He had a football opening. PJ Fleck might have been the number one coach on the market, and he got him. I think Niko Medved was the best coaching candidate on the market, and he got him. Mm-hmm. Now, they got to make it work. They got to find the money, all that stuff. But this, to me, is the best hire I've seen Gopher Sports make for a revenue coach in a long time.
I like the hire a lot. I don't know him personally, but everyone that I know who knows him raves about him. That said, I am in the mind, and I've said it, like, you can hire a great coach. Like Richard Pitino is now at Xavier because he went and kicked ass at New Mexico, and he didn't do what they thought he should do here. There needs to be a real recognition that this program, this Gopher basketball program, is not a real program. And until they invest, until Mark Coyle puts some real work and investment behind this and not just football, it's going to continue to languish because Richard Pitino is a good coach, and they let him go, and he went and won at a high level at New Mexico. Now he's at Xavier. St. Thomas is the best program in this Twin Cities.
Yeah. They've been afraid to play them.
And they're opening up a new arena next year, and they're going to have money, and they're going to go after it. And the thing that burned me about Mark Coyle's statement about Ben Johnson, who I don't think was a great coach, but I think he was fine, was that he said there's no reason that we can't contend for championships at Minnesota. I can think of a million reasons because you never have contended for a championship ever, except for 1 year in the Final Four. And even going back to my glory days of watching Richard Coffey and Melvin Newbern and Willie Burton and all those fun, they were really fun and competitive teams. They were never champions.
No.
Like this program has never been championship. And the reason is because the administration does not put enough work and investment into what they need to do to compete against Michigan, compete against the big Michigan State, the big programs. And until you want to be a big boy and act like an adult and bring real money to the table, you are going to come up short. And so I think Niko Medved will help and they will be better coached under Niko Medved. But if they don't have the money, we're just going to be wasting our time with this conversation.
And Michael Russo, unlike the Gopher men's basketball team, which has a hard time keeping the top Minnesota players here, Bob Motzko, for the most part, gets the players he wants from Minnesota to stay here. And it's still difficult to compete for a national title. They're going to try again this week.
Yeah, I mean, I've been here 20 years and they haven't won a national title. By the way, what Jim said before was so positive. I know the giggly has kicked in. So,
It works.
Yeah.
It's magic.
Cheers.
But anyway, I've been waiting 2 minutes to make that joke.
Well done.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, like they've had great teams while I've been in this town, and I am not I go for hockey, aficionado. That's for sure.
Right.
I did cover them in 2012 though. But I've been here 20 years now, and they last won 23 years ago or some odd. Like it just shows you and there's nowhere near as many Division I hockey teams in this country as there are basketball and football. It is very, very difficult, and they always seem to flounder at the end. Now, a couple years ago, when Brock Faber was a junior there, they obviously came very, very close in the national championship game. But it's just it is a crapshoot. But he does a really good job of getting the guys that he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Wood, you mentioned the portal, one of the top college free agents last summer. Everybody knew he was coming here. It just seems to work, and the portal. I have my own opinions on the whole portal and what it's doing and the whole NIL money and all that. Sometimes it's work, and it's, to me, it does what it's designed. The Wild have a first-round pick in Charlie Strammel that had to get out of Wisconsin. He's gone to Michigan State, had a really good year. Looks like now he won't be a bust, that he could be a player. But it is just it's free agency now. I mean, who was the player the other day in the NCAA tournament that basically said, well, asked him, what do you love about your coach? He was like, first of all, he's the guy that pays us. like talk about saying the thing that you're not supposed to say in the middle of a presser.
Yeah,
the coach was just like,
I also want to say that I want the Go for Women's program to get some love as well in terms of support, because a certain website, which I won't name, had a story recently in which they ranked the states based on if you were able to keep all your high school talent for your state team. How would the states be ranked? Minnesota's women's was ranked second behind California. That's how much fantastic talent has left the state to go play elsewhere. And if they can get some support as well, I think Dawn Plitzewhite is headed in the right direction with that program. She's done wonders despite injuries to key players. You just think if you're able to keep, and this is a hell of a state for girls basketball.
It is. Yeah.
Madison Greenway, she's going to Kentucky. That's unfortunate. Chloe Johnson, fantastic player. If you keep some more of those players, the Gophers could be back to the Final Four like they were with Lindsay Whalen and Janelle McCarville.
Nita Krawczynski will be playing at St. Thomas. I'll tell you that. So.
By the way, I just spent 3 hours at the Cigar Club with him. There's no doubt that he was telling me that he was prepping for the show.
Well researched.
Yeah, and I know one article you just read.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. Well researched.
The Gopher women's basketball team needs Mara Braun healthy. It would
big
transform everything they're doing right now.
Yeah, they're on the right track.
And
that's for
by the
sure.
way, Chad Greenway was not going to let his daughter go to Minnesota. It was not going to happen.
I bet if they paid her $1 million,
What
what
about the Iowa Legacy commit? She didn't even go to Iowa.
But then you don't want to go the place your parents went, do you?
Is she going to Kentucky? Is that where she's going?
Yep.
Or? Yeah. That's too.
Do the Gophers is it still like the old days when all the players were driving around in those mopeds, or do they get now like Aston Martins? What is it like now?
So.
This isn't the University of Texas, man.
I still remember gassing up once on a university and Nick Bukestad rolling up in his little moped, and I'm just like,
Hey, this has
what
been a
world.
blast. I hope we can do it again soon, Jim.
Yeah.
This is great.
Outstanding.
Thank you so much, Mark. Great job tonight. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to everyone who showed up. This is a blast. This will be produced as a podcast. It'll be on TalkNorth.com under Talk North Sports Report. Remember, Mark's first show is out Monday, Rosen Sports Monday. It will be generally a weekly thing. We plan on doing these live shows quarterly. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.